Trust can be deadly. In today's story, the true danger wasn't from strangers. It came from those closest to them. Let's uncover the betrayal together. Emily Monroe had always been a woman of quiet strength, someone whose laughter filled the rooms of her modest suburban home and whose warmth touched the lives of those around her. But beneath that gentle smile was a heart shadowed by long-held fears and an aching loneliness that few could see. At 58, Emily was navigating what many call the second act of life with a mix of hope and hesitation. A divorced mother of 2 grown children, she lived in a leafy neighborhood in a small town just outside Atlanta. Her days were often filled with the simple pleasures she cherished: morning walks with her golden retriever, knitting blankets for local charities, and tending to her beloved rose garden. Yet, despite the calm surface, Emily carried a quiet weight, the unresolved pain of a fractured family, and the creeping sense that trust was becoming a rare and fragile thing. Her daughter, Lisa, lived in a bustling city miles away, often caught up in the whirlwind of a demanding career and her own complicated family life. Her son, Mark, had returned home after a difficult stint with substance abuse, but seemed determined to rebuild himself. Emily's heart held hope for him, even as their relationship remained delicate, stitched together by tentative conversations and hesitant steps toward forgiveness. Emily had recently found herself drawn back into the orbit of an old friend, Karen, a neighbor from years past. Karen was vibrant, charismatic, and effortlessly social, a sharp contrast to Emily's more reserved nature. Yet, Karen's presence had brought a spark to Emily's routine, a whisper of companionship that Emily hadn't realized she'd craved. They spent afternoons sipping tea on sun-dappled porches, sharing stories from their youth, and quietly knitting the threads of friendship anew. But beneath Karen's bright exterior lurked something more complicated. There were subtle moments, brief flashes of jealousy when Emily's attention shifted to her son's progress or Lisa's visits. A sharp tone disguised as concern. Invitations that came with unspoken expectations. The delicate balance of their friendship was a fragile thing, and Emily, always the peacemaker, brushed off her unease as paranoia. It was a chilly evening in late October when Emily's world began to unravel. She had just returned from the grocery store, the air crisp and scented with the faint smoke of burning leaves. The house was unusually silent, no soft music from the kitchen, no Mark's familiar footsteps echoing in the hall. Emily called out, but heard nothing but the echo of her own voice. The front door, usually locked, was slightly ajar. Heart pounding, Emily stepped inside. The living room was disheveled, cushions tossed aside, the scent of something burnt lingering faintly. Her eyes caught the shattered remnants of her favorite vase, a wedding gift, scattered across the floor. Fear prickled her skin. Then, a soft sound from the bedroom. It was Mark, collapsed, pale, struggling to breathe. Emergency services arrived within minutes, but the damage was done. Mark was rushed to the hospital with severe injuries, and Emily was left holding onto the shards of a night she couldn't yet understand. The investigation that followed was as swift as it was bewildering. Neighbors reported seeing a stranger lurking near Emily's home earlier that evening. A suspicious vehicle, dark and unmarked, had been spotted speeding away. But the stranger vanished into thin air, leaving behind only questions. Emily's closest confidant, Karen, seemed distraught, too distraught. Her alibi was shaky, her presence around the house strangely timed. Small inconsistencies in her story raised eyebrows among the investigators, but without concrete proof, suspicion was only a whisper. What shattered Emily most was the whispered betrayal from within her own family. Her daughter, Lisa, confronted her weeks later in a storm of tears and accusations. She claimed Mark's relapse had brought dangerous people into their lives, that Emily had been blind to the risk she posed by welcoming Mark back so soon. Then came the unsettling revelation. Karen had been in contact with Lisa in the days leading up to the attack, texts and calls hidden beneath layers of explanations. Emily's mind spun, grappling with a growing dread. Had Karen's friendship been a facade? Had Lisa, in her desperation to protect her own life and family, conspired with Karen in a plan that went too far? As the police dug deeper, the story twisted in unexpected directions. Surveillance footage revealed that the mysterious stranger had been someone Emily knew, a man from her past, Thomas. Years ago, Thomas had been a close family friend until a bitter falling out tore their bond apart. His presence that night was no coincidence, but a calculated move born from old grudges and fresh wounds. Emily was stunned. Thomas had always been a shadow in her memories, someone she thought had disappeared. Yet here he was, the silent architect of a nightmare. When confronted, Thomas insisted his intentions were protective, a misguided attempt to scare Mark away from a dangerous lifestyle. But the assault went beyond any plan he claimed to have. The lines between protection and punishment blurred in a chilling way. Meanwhile, Karen vanished without a trace, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions and a shattered trust that Emily struggled to reconcile. In the weeks that followed, Emily's home became a fortress of silence and sorrow. Mark remained in the hospital, his recovery slow and uncertain. Emily found herself haunted not just by the attack, but by the fragments of friendships and family ties that had cracked and broken under pressure. Her own health began to falter. Sleepless nights filled with replaying conversations, moments of doubt, and the overwhelming loneliness that came with betrayal. The woman who once found peace in her garden now saw only the twisted shadows of what she had lost. Yet, just as Emily started to grasp the depth of the deception around her, a new and unsettling discovery surfaced. A package left at her doorstep with no return address. Inside was a single photo, grainy and torn, showing Karen and Thomas together in a moment of whispered secrecy. The note attached was even more chilling. You don't know the whole story. The story of Emily Monroe is far from over. As the investigation turns its gaze to these new revelations, the web of betrayal tightens. Who was truly behind the attack? Was it jealousy, fear, desperation, or something even darker, rooted in the tangled history of people Emily once trusted without question? Emily sits alone in her quiet house, the echoes of broken friendships and shattered family ties filling the spaces once warmed by love. Her journey through this nightmare is just beginning, and the answers she seeks are cloaked in shadows. What secret binds Karen and Thomas? Why did Lisa keep silent? And what message lies behind that ominous note? The truth remains just out of reach. Emily sat by the hospital window, watching the brittle autumn leaves swirl in the chilly wind. The sterile white walls felt like a prison around her, trapping not just her body, but the fragments of her broken life. Mark lay unconscious in the adjacent room, tubes and monitors tethering him to a fragile thread between life and death. Every beep was a painful reminder of how quickly safety can shatter. She had replayed that night over and over in her mind. The open door, the shattered vase, Mark's broken body. But what haunted her most wasn't just the violence, it was the unraveling of trust. The quiet betrayals, the whispered lies, the shadowy alliances she never saw coming. Days after the package arrived on her doorstep, Emily sat at her kitchen table, the photograph of Karen and Thomas lying between her trembling hands. The image was grainy and torn, but clear enough to show Karen's unmistakable smile, the kind she only reserved for those she trusted implicitly. And there was Thomas, eyes narrowed, his posture tense yet familiar. Emily's mind raced. Why were they together? What secret had Karen been hiding all along? The note's chilling words echoed in her head. You don't know the whole story. Her phone buzzed. It was Lisa. Mom. Lisa's voice trembled on the other end. We need to talk. It's about Karen. And everything. The conversation that followed was anything but comforting. Lisa confessed that she'd uncovered texts and phone calls between Karen and Thomas for months before the attack. Messages laced with anger and fear, coded warnings, and veiled threats. Yet, Lisa insisted she had no idea what it all meant. She swore she had nothing to do with any plan, that she had only wanted to protect her family in her own flawed way. Emily's heart twisted in pain. Could she believe her daughter? Or was this yet another layer of deception? Detective Marcus Hayes, the lead investigator, sat across from Emily in her cluttered living room. His face, etched with fatigue, held a kindness that contrasted with the grim news he brought. We're getting closer, he said quietly, eyes flicking to the photo on the coffee table. Karen's connection to Thomas complicates things, but it might also be the key to uncovering what really happened that night. Emily nodded, though the weight of uncertainty pressed down on her. But Karen's gone. She disappeared the night after Mark was admitted. Detective Hayes sighed. We've issued a missing person report. We're combing through her known contacts, financial records, and phone activity. But no solid leads yet. Emily clenched her fists. Karen, the woman she had once trusted like a sister, had vanished into thin air. And with her, crucial answers. While the investigation trudged forward, Emily's personal world grew darker. Mark's condition was stable but critical. The doctors warned that the road to recovery would be long and uncertain. Physical scars might heal, but the emotional trauma, they cautioned, could linger far longer. Each visit to the hospital was a silent ritual for Emily. She would sit by Mark's bedside, hold his hand, and whisper words of encouragement, hoping her presence could somehow anchor him to the light. But the strain took its toll. Emily's sleep became fragmented by nightmares, visions of the attack, distorted faces, and cryptic voices. Her appetite vanished. The rose garden, once her sanctuary, wilted under her neglect. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, Emily found herself staring at the photo again. The deeper she looked, the more details surfaced. A subtle bracelet on Karen's wrist that Emily didn't recognize, a flash of a car key fob in Thomas's hand. Little pieces that didn't add up. Determined, Emily called her old friend Gloria, a retired jewelry appraiser who knew Karen well. "Gloria," Emily said, "do you recognize this bracelet? I can't remember Karen ever wearing it." After a pause, Gloria's voice dropped. "That's not just any bracelet, Emily. It's a medical alert bracelet, usually worn by someone with a serious condition, like epilepsy or severe allergies." Emily's breath caught. But Karen never mentioned anything like that. People hide things, especially when it suits them. The revelation sent a ripple of doubt through Emily. Was Karen's disappearance linked to a hidden health crisis? Or was it a cover for something darker? Late one night, as rain hammered against the windows, there was a soft knock at Emily's door. Heart racing, she opened it to find a woman, soaked and shivering, whose eyes held a fearful desperation. "I'm sorry to bother you," the woman whispered, "but I know things about Karen. Things you need to hear." The stranger introduced herself as Mia, a local bartender who had recently come into contact with Karen. She revealed that Karen had been meeting with Thomas in secret for weeks, desperate and terrified. According to Mia, Karen believed someone was watching her, threatening to expose secrets that could ruin lives. Emily listened, every word a new thread in the tangled web of betrayal. "Why come to me?" Emily asked. "Because Karen trusted you once. And now, you might be the only one who can save her." Before Emily could respond, the woman slipped away into the stormy night, leaving behind a chilling warning. "Be careful who you trust." The tension at home grew unbearable. Lisa visited less frequently, and when she did, conversations were strained and filled with silence. Mark's absence and slow recovery weighed heavily on them all. Emily's brother, David, who had always been a rock in her life, expressed concern. "Emily, you can't carry this alone. You need help. You're sinking in shadows." But Emily shook her head, her voice weary. "This is my family. My responsibility." David's frustration simmered. Sometimes, stepping back is the only way to move forward. Their relationship, once close, began to fray under the pressure. Determined not to be powerless, Emily took to investigating on her own. She sifted through emails, old phone records, and Karen's social media accounts. The more she dug, the clearer it became that Karen had been living a double life, one filled with financial troubles, secret meetings, and cryptic messages exchanged under pseudonyms. Emily discovered that Karen had recently made a large cash withdrawal, unexplained and sudden. There were also indications she had visited a mysterious address on the outskirts of town repeatedly. Summoning courage, Emily decided to visit the location. The place was an abandoned warehouse surrounded by overgrown weeds and rusted fences. The air smelled of damp earth and forgotten memories. Emily's heart pounded as she edged closer to a dimly lit window. Inside, shadowy figures moved, whispers, hurried conversations. Suddenly, a hand grabbed her shoulder. Spinning around, Emily found herself face to face with Thomas. His eyes were cold but not unkind. "You shouldn't be here, Emily." "Why? What's going on? What did Karen get herself into?" Thomas's gaze flickered with something unspoken. "This is bigger than you know. Bigger than Karen, or even Mark." Emily's breath caught. "What do you mean?" Before Thomas could answer, distant sirens pierced the night. "We don't have much time." He pulled Emily away from the warehouse, into the darkened streets. In the safety of a nearby diner, over steaming coffee, Thomas unfolded a story Emily never expected. Karen had stumbled upon evidence, not of crime syndicates or gangs, but of corruption within their own town's leadership. She had found proof that powerful people were manipulating contracts, siphoning funds meant for public welfare. When Karen threatened to expose them, her life, and those close to her, became targets. Thomas claimed he tried to protect her, but the deeper they got, the more dangerous it became. The attack on Mark was a warning, a message to stay silent. Emily's mind raced. Could this explain Lisa's secrecy, Karen's disappearance, and the cryptic notes? Suddenly, Thomas's phone buzzed. He answered, his face paling. "It's them," he whispered, eyes darting around. Emily strained to hear the muffled voice on the other end. "They know where we are." Before she could react, the diner door burst open. Two men in dark suits stepped inside, their eyes scanning the room. Thomas grabbed Emily's hand, pulling her toward the back exit. As they disappeared into the night, Emily's heart hammered in her chest. Was escape possible? Or were they walking deeper into the shadows? Days later, Emily received a package, a second photo. This time, it was a close-up of her own home, the front door slightly open. Inside, scrawled on a piece of paper, were 3 words. "We're watching you." Emily stood frozen, the walls of safety crumbling around her. Someone close had betrayed her again. Or maybe, the real enemy had never been far away. Her phone buzzed, a message from an unknown number. "Trust no one." Emily stared at her phone, the words glowing harshly in the dim light of her living room. Trust no one. The message from an unknown number was a dagger wrapped in silence. A cruel reminder that the fragile walls she had tried to rebuild around herself were once again under siege. The house felt colder that night, every creak amplified in the shadowed corners. Her mind was a storm of questions, memories, and gut-wrenching fear. Who was watching her? Who wanted her silenced? And most terrifyingly, could she trust even herself to know the truth anymore? In the weeks following the ominous message, Emily felt herself retreating into a fortress of solitude. Calls from Lisa became sporadic and terse. Mark remained in the hospital, his condition improving but still fragile. David's well-intentioned visits were met with distracted gratitude, but little conversation. Everyone seemed to dance around the unspeakable tension that hung thick in the air. Emily's once vibrant world had dimmed to shades of gray. The rose garden outside was now a tangle of overgrowth, mirroring her tangled thoughts. The physical scars of that awful night had only scratched the surface. The emotional wounds ran far deeper. At night, she found herself pacing the floorboards, the silence pressing down, broken only by the distant hum of the city that never really felt so distant before. One morning, as dawn broke hesitantly over the horizon, Emily's phone buzzed with an unexpected call. It was Detective Marcus Hayes. "Emily, we've made a breakthrough. You need to come to the station." The ride to the police station was a blur. Emily gripped the seat tightly, anticipation and dread clawing at her chest. What had they found? Could it finally be the key to unraveling this nightmare? Detective Hayes met her in a small, cluttered interrogation room. His usual calm was shadowed by urgency. "We've identified the 2 men who confronted you and Thomas at the diner," he said. "They're linked to a local construction company that's been under investigation for bribery and fraud, the same company Karen suspected." Emily's breath hitched. "So Karen was right?" "Yes," Hayes nodded. "But it's more than that. This company has deep ties to city officials. The corruption runs higher and deeper than anyone thought." He slid a folder across the table. Inside were photos, documents, and phone records showing Karen's attempts to gather evidence and the threats she'd received. "You're in danger, Emily. More than you realize." Leaving the station, Emily felt a brittle thread of hope mingling with the fear. She wasn't alone. Someone was fighting alongside her, though the path ahead remained perilous. That evening, her phone buzzed again, this time a video message from Karen. Emily's hands trembled as she pressed play. Karen's face filled the screen, eyes weary but fierce. "If you're watching this, Emily, I'm either gone or in hiding. They're watching everything we do, our calls, messages, even our meetings. You have to be careful. Trust no one, but especially don't turn away from your family. They are the key. I've left something hidden where only you can find it, a file that exposes everything. But be warned, those who want it destroyed will stop at nothing." The video cut out abruptly. Emily's heart pounded. Karen's message was a lifeline and a warning. She needed to act fast. In the quiet of her bedroom, Emily searched through Karen's belongings, now returned to her custody. She rifled through drawers, old notebooks, and beneath cushions until her fingers brushed against a small, locked box. The key was missing. Her eyes scanned the room desperately, then landed on the bracelet, the medical alert bracelet Gloria had identified earlier. With shaking hands, Emily pried it open, revealing a tiny hidden compartment. Inside was a small key. Her breath caught. The key fit perfectly. Inside the box was a USB drive and a folded note in Karen's familiar handwriting. "For Emily, truth no matter the cost." Emily plugged the USB into her laptop. What followed was hours of watching video recordings, reading documents, and piecing together Karen's investigation. The evidence was damning. The construction company had been funneling money into secret accounts controlled by city officials, manipulating bids, and endangering public safety. Worse, some projects had been approved despite dangerous structural flaws, putting lives at risk. Karen's videos showed meetings, recorded conversations, and financial transactions. The darker side of their town was exposed in stark relief. But buried within the files were names Emily hadn't expected, people she knew. Friends, neighbors, even relatives. One name made her blood run cold, Lisa. Emily's phone rang. It was Lisa. "Mom, I have to tell you something." Lisa's voice was fractured, raw. "I never meant for any of this to happen. I was scared for Mark, scared for all of us. When I found out about the corruption, I thought if we just kept quiet, maybe it would go away. I never wanted anyone hurt. I just wanted to protect you." Tears streamed down Emily's face as Lisa confessed to meeting with city officials, trying to negotiate a way out, hoping to keep her family safe. But she was trapped in a web she couldn't control. The family Emily thought she knew was now a stranger. Days later, Mark was released from the hospital, fragile but alive. The reunion was bittersweet, the wounds visible in both body and spirit. Emily watched her son struggle to adjust, haunted by nightmares and sudden bursts of anger. The trauma had reshaped him in ways they were only beginning to understand. One evening, Emily found Mark staring blankly at the rose garden. "I don't feel safe anywhere anymore, Mom," he whispered. Her heart broke. "We'll get through this. Together." Just as the pieces seemed to be falling into place, another shock struck. Karen's car was found abandoned at a nearby lake. Doors open, keys inside, but no sign of Karen. The town buzzed with speculation. Had she fled? Was she in danger? Or was something far worse at play? Emily felt a cold dread settle in her bones. Karen was missing again, but this time, there were no clues, only silence. One night, Emily awoke to the sound of shattering glass. Heart pounding, she crept through the darkened house to find her front window smashed, shards glittering like dangerous stars across the floor. A note was pinned to the broken glass with a bloodied knife. "Stop digging or lose everything." Emily clutched the note, the threat clear and terrifying. Someone was watching her, tracking her every move. And they were willing to destroy anyone who got too close. The next morning, as Emily stepped outside to assess the damage, a black SUV rolled silently into the driveway. The window rolled down to reveal a face she hadn't seen since that terrible night, Thomas. But this time, his expression was unreadable, eyes shadowed by secrets. "Emily," he said quietly, "there's something you need to know, something I couldn't tell you before. And it changes everything." Before she could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgent message. He read it and paled. "They're coming for us." Emily's breath caught as the SUV's engine roared to life, speeding away into the thickening fog. Behind her, the shattered window glistened in the morning light. The battle for truth and survival had only just begun. Emily's breath caught as the black SUV disappeared into the fog, leaving behind the shattered silence of her once safe home. The morning sun struggled through the heavy mist, casting ghostly shadows across the broken glass. The weight of Thomas's words, "They're coming for us," pressed heavily on her chest. For years, she had clung to hope, but now, hope felt fragile, like the delicate petals of the roses in her untended garden. The weeks that followed were a relentless storm of fear, resilience, and unyielding determination. Thomas had returned to Emily's life not as a stranger, but as an uneasy ally, a man burdened by secrets but committed to helping her uncover the truth that had nearly destroyed them all. Together, they pieced together the tangled threads of corruption, betrayal, and danger that enveloped their town like a suffocating fog. Emily spent countless hours poring over Karen's hidden files, decoding messages and tracking leads that the police had overlooked. She spoke with old friends, neighbors, and even former employees of the construction company, slowly unraveling the extent of the conspiracy. The corruption wasn't just financial greed. It was a brutal disregard for human life, with falsified safety reports leading to the collapse of public infrastructure and the endangerment of countless families. Mark, though still fragile from the attack, stood by her side, his presence a steady anchor in the chaos. His recovery was a testament to the family's resilience, but beneath his calm exterior simmered a determination to reclaim their shattered lives. Detective Marcus Hayes intensified the investigation, emboldened by Emily's findings and renewed evidence. Surveillance footage, financial records, and witness testimonies began to converge into a damning case. The mysterious men who had confronted Emily and Thomas at the diner were identified as enforcers hired to intimidate whistleblowers and silence those who dared speak out. Then, just as the pressure mounted, Karen was found. She had been hiding in a remote cabin, her spirit battered but unbroken. Her disappearance had been a desperate attempt to protect Emily and her family, and to gather the final pieces of evidence needed to bring the perpetrators to justice. The reunion between the two women was raw and emotional. Two survivors united by pain, courage, and the unwavering pursuit of truth. Together, they presented their evidence to the district attorney, who swiftly convened a grand jury. The arrests followed in rapid succession. City officials, construction company executives, and their hired enforcers, all indicted on charges of bribery, fraud, conspiracy, and assault. The trial was a public spectacle, exposing the dark underbelly of a town many thought was safe and familiar. Emily testified with a trembling voice, recounting the attack on Mark, the threats, and the betrayals that had shattered her world. Karen's courageous statements detailed the extent of the corruption and the risks she had taken to expose it. Lisa, too, faced the court, grappling with her own mistakes and fears. Her testimony was a raw confession of misguided loyalty and a desperate attempt to protect those she loved. The courtroom was thick with emotion as the family's fractured relationships unfolded before the eyes of a captivated public. Throughout the trial, Emily found strength in the presence of her children and the unexpected support from the community. Neighbors who had once been distant came forward with stories and evidence, their voices joining the chorus demanding justice. After weeks of testimony, the jury delivered their verdict, guilty on all counts. The sentencing was both a relief and a somber reminder of the cost of corruption. The city officials and company executives received lengthy prison terms. The enforcers were condemned for their violent actions, and the shadow of betrayal that had loomed over Emily's life began to dissipate. As the courtroom emptied, Emily stood outside, the crisp air filling her lungs. She looked at her family, Mark steady and strong, Lisa with tears of remorse and hope, and Karen, the steadfast friend who had risked everything. Her voice broke as she spoke. This isn't just the end of a trial. It's the beginning of healing, for all of us. The scars remained, as they always would, but so did the resilience. Emily's journey had been marked by loss, fear, and betrayal, but it was also a story of courage, justice, and the unbreakable bonds of family. She returned home, stepping into her garden where the first blooms of spring had begun to unfold. The roses, like her spirit, were fragile yet unyielding, a testament to survival. Emily Monroe's tragic chapter had closed, but her story of strength and hope would echo far beyond the walls of her shattered home. The darkness had been faced, the perpetrators brought to light, and justice served. In the quiet aftermath, Emily found a new beginning, one built on truth, love, and the unshakable belief that even in the deepest shadows, light can prevail. If their trust was broken, we won't let their story fade. Subscribe for more powerful stories about betrayal, survival, and long overdue justice. Thanks for watching.